Israel, the only democracy in the Middle East. Jerusalem, the most hotly contested real estate in the world. Judea and Samaria, condemned by the world as the West Bank. You'll not see it in the media. Journalists try to hide it. Real stories about real people, fathers, mothers, children, families. These are the people of the heartland of Israel. Your journey with him continues with the Joshua and Caleb Report, stories from the heartland of Israel.
Well, Moshe, it is awesome to be here with you in Jerusalem. I've been here countless times, and what we want to do here is, a lot of people know about your shop, a lot of people know about your story in regards to Jewish-Christian relations. We're going to take this into a personal level with you to hear your story about you coming to the land. We're just talking to you, I found out you actually were born here, but let's go back to when you first heard the sound of the shofar here in Jerusalem that made that call for you to come back here to Israel.
So actually what was going on was, as you said, I was born here, my father was born here. We go back that many generations, and my grandfather arrived in the 20s, but that meant that all of our family was here. And in '67, before the Six-Day War, the news was horrific. I mean, the assumption was there was going to be another Holocaust. In Tel Aviv and in Haifa, they were actually digging out mass graves because they expected the worst, because that's what the press, that's what the media, and that's what the Arabs were saying. This is it. Israel's going to be destroyed. And so we were constantly staying up nights trying to pick up any fragment of information. And on the day of June 7th, the day after the war began, I was actually writing a chemistry exam in my high school. But I remember I brought a transistor radio with a little ear pod that I sort of smuggled through my shirt so I could get away with listening while I was writing the exam. And what they had on was a rebroadcast. And what they were rebroadcasting was one of the soldiers, a war correspondent, was running with the troops into the old city. And you heard him huffing and puffing. You heard the shots being fired. But you heard all the soldiers yelling to each other, not take cover, but where is it? How do we get there? Where do we find it? And he's huffing and puffing. He says, here it is, where is it? How do I get? Finally he says, here I am. I'm at the stairs going down to the Western Wall. And as he's going down, he's very typical Israeli, saying, well, you know, I'm not a religious man. I've never been a religious man. I don't know if I believe in God. I don't know. But here I am standing in front of the Western Wall. And he says, and here I'm about to touch the stones of the Western Wall. And he says, here I am touching the stones of the Western Wall, and then silence. And you just hear this quiet sobbing. And as his sobbing gets stronger, obviously what he did was he took the microphone, moved it to the side to take it away from his crying. And Rabbi Goren, the chief rabbi of the army, had actually come in with a bunch of soldiers and had gathered together several of them to say prayers. Prayers for those that were killed, prayers for those that had survived. And it was so moving that you then heard the reporter sobbing uncontrollably at that point. And then Rabbi Goren decided to pull out a small shofar. It was a very special shofar, it turned out to be, but I didn't know that at the time. He pulls out a shofar and decides to blow the shofar. The first time the shofar had been blown in the Western Wall freely, without anybody telling them not to do it, thousands of years. Here was the shofar being blown at the Western Wall, thousands of kilometers over the ocean, into a little transistor radio, through an ear pod, into my ear and into my soul. It changed me in ways I never would have imagined. I was a young kid. You don't think of dramatic changes. But I remembered then thinking that no matter what it would take, I made a vow, I would be a Jerusalemite with my wife, my family. There was nothing like that then. I was still a kid. But I knew that no matter what it would take, I would be here, be part of what was going on, because something new had transpired in the world. The world just shifted with that blow of the shofar, which is exactly what Scripture said would happen. So I knew that no matter what it would take, the person I would marry, the people I'd be friends with, are people who have that same sort of vision and desire and yearning. And so that really changed. I mean, I'd always wanted to be here. I'd always felt a connection to here, but that was like the moment that was the pivotal change. From then on, nothing was what it was before. And that shofar still, I mean, I'll listen to it on a tape or on YouTube, and it still moves me to an nth degree.
Is this something that every Jewish person in the world had that same experience you did, that heard that call? Do you think there was something inside that?
I think what happened, interestingly enough, is every single Jewish person in 1967 was changed. The Jewish people as a people were changed. They suddenly realized they weren't living in exile anymore, but there was the possibility of redemption. And once that possibility of redemption came in, suddenly everything was possible. Everything was possible. Every song you sang, every prayer you sang, suddenly wasn't just another song to remind us, to give us strength and empower us. It was, we're talking about something that can happen today, tomorrow, the next day. So the key is, do you get involved or not? I remember my father was a Bible teacher. He used to teach us, in Canada you can study the Tanakh, the Bible. In Israel you become the Tanakh. And the thought that you had the potential to be a fulfillment of God's word is an incredible thing. You know, it's like you read the Bible, you go, wow, that'll be amazing when that happens, and you suddenly realize God's on the move. What are you going to do? You're going to sit back, or are you going to be part of the move?
So that's my next question: is what did you do? When you heard that, what you did? You made a lot of actions in your life. I know by as much as I know about you, but can you explain a little bit deeper into what was that action that you took place?
I think well, first of all, it was the vow. At the age of, I forget even the age, but to make a vow when at a time where life was always about the here and now. When you're young, it's like, I'm living my day, right?
Right.
And that was already life-changing. The second thing is I realized that any decision I had to make, and I had to make a whole bunch of decisions. I was at that time in pre-med. I decided to do something else and switch into something that would be more about reaching out to my own people. So that suddenly became the key. The key is, how do I connect and interconnect with as many of my fellow brothers and sisters and help bring them back to the awareness. Let them make their own decisions, but let them be aware something new was happening. So I became very involved in Jewish education, Jewish outreach, and I think the major message switched from just simply reinforcing your faith in God, which is critical, reinforcing with your faith in the people of Israel. Something was happening with the peoplehood of Israel that hadn't been happening for thousands of years. And that, I think, made a major change.
So what was your, you said you're getting into studies and all these things. How did that connect to Israel? What was that, what did that look like?
When I made a decision that becoming a doctor was a very important thing in the family, should we do it, should I not do it? I was pushing for it. I realized that was about me and helping, becoming part of the Jewish people in terms of Jewish education, and I decided actually to get a degree in therapy. I became a family therapist. It was all about, how do I bring people together, because we need to bridge those breaks between us, because after being in years of exile, you become like an abused child. You become like a broken family. How do you heal those wounds? Because everything is, from then on, everything was about bringing people back here. Myself, my wife and children eventually, but it was to get that message across to as many people as I could.
So you mentioned your wife and children. When did that part come in?
So first of all, I got married, thank God. We had 3 children there, but everything was about, how do we get there? And life is such that making that decision of leaving a place of plenty, leaving a place where it's easy.
Where was that place?
It was in Montreal, in Toronto. I grew up in Montreal, and then I moved to Toronto where I met my wife, and we had 3 of our children. It was about learning how to rescheduling your life, and life has a way of tantalizing you to take the easy road. So first my wife was ready and I wasn't, and I said, wait, we still got to do this, and then I was ready and she wasn't. It came to a point where we said our eldest was going to be 5 years old for kindergarten, and we're not going to make him go through this difficulty of being tantalized by what could be, and let's live out prophecy. So we both decided that before he became grade 1 or kindergarten, actually, we'd make the move. And that was when God sort of switched the monetary seduction. Suddenly business got better, and it was like God was saying, okay, good, are you going to do this or not? And we did it. And we had 3 other children here since. So we raised our 6 children here, all of them with a passion that this is where we all needed to be. And thank God that passion got transmitted to all of them. And just an interesting little anecdote. I remember we used to go back a lot to visit my wife's family, because all of our family ended up here. My brother, my sister, and my parents eventually as well. But we'd visit my parents, my in-laws, and they, thank God, had a nice, beautiful farm, and they had a cottage that we'd go visit, and the kids would go fishing and go on a boat. Like, my fear always was, this would be too much. You know, how can you take them away from that? They're living a life of, you know, ease. And so I once asked my eldest, I said, Yoni, I said, what do you think about going back to Canada, Israel? And what do you think? He goes, it's amazing. He says, Canada has things. He says, this is the age of 10.
Wow.
Canada has things, but Israel has Jerusalem. And I thought, nah, he got it.
So when you moved directly here to Jerusalem?
We moved directly to Jerusalem. That was the promise.
Wow.
I made another promise, by the way, when I was a teenager. And that promise was that someday my wife and then children, maybe grandchildren, would dance in the courtyards of the temple. And God willing, I'll keep that promise as well.
Wow. Lord willing, that'd be what a day. And I guess that kind of leads into the place of Jerusalem today and the future as well. I want to go back into what Jerusalem has gone through, that restoration, if we could say that Jerusalem has, that you've seen through your eyes.
You know, it's a great question, because when I got here, I started realizing Jerusalem's restoration is not just spiritual, it is physical. Meaning, I suddenly got excited about a new mall being built and a new road being built, and I thought, in the end, I go, that's great, it's easy. And I realized, no, this isn't. This is spiritual. This is the physical Jerusalem being created so that there would be room and ease for all the people that are going to be coming here, because millions upon millions of people are going to be coming here. So suddenly, every little stone, every little building, every little highway that was being built suddenly had incredible spiritual impact that filled me with an incredible joy, which, to be honest, when I saw it in Canada, I was like, well, that's cool, that's a really nice building, but it wasn't the same thing. Here it's like, I suddenly realized that Israel was about connecting the heavenly and the earthly. You know, in our concept, heavenly Jerusalem and earthly Jerusalem are already there. Our problem is we don't see it. We see a disconnect, right? Because we separate the physical from the spiritual. When in fact God says, why are you doing that? I created the physical. You think that's not spiritual? So suddenly every physical thing developed a whole new meaning. Every raindrop developed a whole new meaning. I mean, we're sitting here, standing here in the rain, and in other parts of the world, that would be like, oh God, it's raining. Here, it's an incredible blessing, right? God says, he says, you want rain in Egypt, go to the Nile, or go to the Nile. Anyway, go to the Nile. Here, come to me. So suddenly God speaks to us in every raindrop, speaks to us in every, there isn't a day, a rainy day we had today where there isn't 5 minutes of sun. God's saying, don't worry, I haven't forgotten about you, make it easy. So suddenly the physical, the spiritual, the flower, the fruits. And Ezekiel 36 says, mountains, shoot forth your branches, give forth your fruit because my children are coming home. When I realized that I'm holding an orange and that was promised by God and God made it grow, it's like, whoa, that's amazing. So it's like you're overwhelmed by living in God, so to speak.
Yeah. What's been your, just the whole physical side of Jerusalem and seeing its beauty grow? Like just from, looking at a picture from, 1967, after, I mean, this place, even from me coming here and walking here today, there's been a major, major deal. Can you explain how that happened?
You know, things creep up on you. When the physical develops, it creeps up on you, and you sort of get used to what you have, and suddenly we used to come into the old city, like you said, ruins here, ruins there. Suddenly everything is built up, and it's constantly being built up. My neighborhood, right, was a neighborhood in Jerusalem. I remember when we first moved here, I woke up really early for, it was Day of Atonement. I remember waking up early, and I walked out of the apartment building to get to my apartment building, but I had to stop because some shepherd had brought some sheep to graze on the hill right across. You go into that neighborhood now, it's a suburb. It's like, there ain't no room for sheep or anything else. So suddenly everything is developing, everything is rebuilding, and I remember when they built the Churva synagogue, they rebuilt, for a long time it was an arch. There was going to be a memorial to, they said that we would never come back here, and this memorial would be a memorial to what was destroyed. And we suddenly realized, why have a memorial? Why not build a synagogue? So I remember they built a synagogue, And it freaked out the world a little bit, like especially the Palestinians. They got upset, and you couldn't really understand why. And then so I was interviewed on some news thing, and I said, I don't really understand. I mean, why are you upset? She said, you know, the world is upset. I said, why would you be upset about a place of God being rebuilt? Maybe you should have been upset when this place of God was destroyed. And I said, you realize, without them knowing it, their soul understands that the rebuilding of that building, just like the rebuilding of every other building, is actually a clear, true sign that God's on the move. Something's happening. So the world is sitting there waiting for something to happen. And suddenly, I'm looking out my window and I remember seeing my kids playing in the streets and in the garden. And I'm going, whoa, when Zechariah had that vision of seeing children playing in the streets of Jerusalem, could have been them. So suddenly I realize I'm fulfilling Scripture. Wow. And it was such an easy decision to do it, and not realizing it. So there's a whole bunch of people out in the world waiting for God to do what God's doing. And then some people, by the way, like Hayovel, like everybody that lives here, suddenly realize, whoa, if God's doing it, I want to be part. And it's like jumping in and saying, I'm going to be part.
Yeah. Do you see a change there where you came in from outside, seeing what was happening in Israel? You heard that shofar blast in Canada, and you said, I've got to come. But for your children, I'm wondering how did they grab a hold of it? Because they're like living in Jerusalem. They're seeing this restoration happen. How did they catch it? And really, what are they doing today?
Well, it's a great question. I always wonder, are they going to get the same passion? So I think it's because we talk about it, because we live it, they are. And every one of them has found a way to be part of the restoration of the people. Some are teachers. Some are involved in media, Israeli media, promoting Israel and the land of Israel and Judea and Samaria. Others are, one of my sons just finished his stint in the army as a commander. Everybody feels that everything they can do is going to make us a better people, this land a better land, and the world a better place.
That's incredible. I think just passing that on to generation is something that is beautiful in Jerusalem, of all places. To grow up and to start that generational, just learning and teaching and passing down. To grow up and read a prophecy that was written in the Bible and then be watching your children live it.
It's even grandchildren. When you see grandchildren.
How many grandchildren do you have?
A lot. We have a lot, thank God. But when you see grandchildren sitting around the Shabbat table and saying, remember last week Abraham said this and this, how come this week they're living it? It's not that they're reading about it, they're living it. And they know the places, they've been to the places. So it's like, this is Abraham, their forefather, who's like the grandfather who lived around the corner. Where do you get something like that?
Yeah. What a backdrop. And for you as a teacher and doing all this, to have people coming into Jerusalem to teach, and this is amazing.
It's a dream come true.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Can you tell us about what that journey's been like in the teaching of once you came to Israel? What are you doing now with that, and how's life look for you right now?
So the reality is the teaching hasn't stopped, thank God. I mean, I teach in order to learn, right? Really, that's the bottom line. You want to focus on something in order to transmit it to students in the yeshiva or people who come into the shop, and that means you've got to really go back. There's a wonderful verse in Jeremiah how it says, God is the hope of Israel, but the word that's used is mikveh, right? Speaking of water and being drenched, it's about swimming in God. This land is about being able to swim in God. So the teaching and the studying and then all of a sudden seeing something else happen. Meaning for a long time I thought, I'll be there, Jewish people will come, I'll reconnect them to who they are, and wonderful stories occurred out of the shop. Then suddenly the Christian world began to change and start asking questions they hadn't asked in 2,000 years because we weren't really a piece of the vision. But suddenly God says, no. Not only they are, I'm going to use them for you to know that I'm God. That's what he said to Ezekiel. So suddenly we started getting one group after another. Today, as many of you know, we get about 4 or 5 groups a day coming in, shutting the doors. Everybody with their own agenda, but it doesn't matter. My agenda is for them to walk out going, wow, God is on the move. And he's great. So there's no greater gift God has given me is the ability to be part of that, as everybody, by the way, as you all know, based on what you're doing, that being part of this is uplifting, empowering, and humbling all at the same time.
You've walked in and out of Jerusalem I would say close to almost every day, maybe, for the last 29 years. I mean, you opened the shop here. And so we've talked about the progression of what you've seen and what you've observed here in this beautiful city. And the restoration process that Hashem is doing here. I mean, even me, I've just been coming here 10 years, and now I'm starting to see just the things that I see changing. It's like, wow, the redemption process is taking place. And so now I want to wrap up this interview with one question, and you can take a second to think about it if you want to. What are your dreams of the future? Like, what are you seeing right now that you're saying, Bezrat Hashem, in my life, I'm going to see this?
Well, first of all, I have to fulfill another vow. I'm going to dance in the courtyards of the temple with my family and with you guys. The whole world will be here doing the same thing. So that's going to happen, Bezrat Hashem. Until that time, I just love, there's no greater joy for me to see eyes lighting up going, whoa, it's true. It's really happening. To see that light in people's eyes is to see God's light being lit again. Because I believe we are His language, right? That's how God uses it. And to see people suddenly going, whoa, something's going on. This land it's not about politics. It's not about Palestinians and Israelis. This is about God unfolding a dream and saying it ain't a dream anymore. We were as dreamers, it says, but it isn't a dream, it's real. And so being part of that and seeing it light up in the eyes of, as you've probably seen in talking to people, suddenly you see in their eyes, they're going, wow, they're seeing it too. That light is gonna just continue to develop and expand and grow, and to know that somewhere in that whole history, I had this little piece of it. That to me is like the greatest gift God could have given us.